Do you know who is the most important person that you should be talking to in terms of creating an emergency plan for your family? Now, I know most of you are going to say your spouse, and depending on who you set this up to be, it may be your spouse. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lucretia, and what I do is help families organize what matters most in terms of creating an emergency plan, or also known as end of life planning. But a lot of people get freaked out when you say end of life, so an emergency plan. And every person needs one. I don't care who you are, what age or stage of life that you're in, unless you're like really minor, of course. But I don't care if you're okay, your spouse is okay, your parents are doing really well and they're able to help out with the kids on the weekends. Guess what? That's the best time to start putting plans in place for an emergency plan. And you want to know why? That allows you to respond in bad situations instead of reacting. And we all know when you're reacting, you're not thinking as clearly as you normally would. And so you make some decisions sometimes that you regret. So listen, how do I know this information? Well, unfortunately, I went through a situation of having to put a funeral together and not knowing all the questions that I should have asked before something happened. Therefore, you get to learn from my mistakes. So what's the number one person that you should talk to when getting an emergency plan together? Definitely by far is the beneficiary. Now, again, the beneficiary may be your spouse, it could be your children. In some cases, it could be a really good friend. First thing that you should definitely ask yourself, because if you're choosing a beneficiary, 9 times out of 10, you trust this person already. So the first question that I always like to ask people is, how does this person act when it comes to having conflict with anybody, whether it's at work, with you, or somebody else that they may know? Do they shut down? Do they act really rude? Do they cuss people out? That's something to really consider, because imagine when somebody goes, you don't know the situation, and sometimes it's a high stress situation. And some people, instead of waking up and being able to function, they shut completely down. The second question that you should ask, how do they deal with your family? So look, I know you think like, oh, my family is different, so I can kind of understand. They have to be able to know how to communicate with your family, with the funeral director, with somebody that's setting up the church, somebody that's doing all the arrangements. If they're not a good communicator, that's something that you should really look at or try to work with them on. And the third thing you want to ask yourself is, how do they handle money? Now, look, I know you don't want to think that that's a bad thing, but if a person is not responsible enough to, one, handle their own bills on a consistent basis, not like on a once in a while thing, but consistently they're making bad choices. And then if you ask them to do something, do they give you all your change back? Do they get what they want, or do they get what you specifically asked you? Or are they more like, well, I think this is a better option? I want you to think in terms of like, if something happened to you and you wrote out specific instructions of what you wanted to be done in this scenario, are they going to do what you asked, or are they going to do what they think is best? And if you know that they're going to do what they think is best, I promise you, that's exactly what they're going to do when the situation happens. So listen, if you have not had a chance to get this stuff together, it's not too late. You're still breathing and you still have the opportunity. If you don't know what questions to ask, I've got you covered. I created a book. It's called Questions Now or Regrets Later. And what this book does is help you to understand which questions you should not just be asking yourself or your family, but questions that you also want to ask a licensed professional, like a lawyer, an insurance agent, a licensed insurance agent, or even somebody within the courts or a funeral home. These questions can help save you a lot of time in times of frustration and a lot of money, because you don't want to be sitting in front of somebody that is charging you by the hour and you don't know what questions that are going to really help you. So I have a link down below. It's www.notyourtypicalplanner.com. Order yourself a copy, go through the book, and if you have questions, I also teach a class with this specific thing in mind. I have a certain way that I go about doing it to make sure that I can cover as many bases as possible, because you know what, every situation is different. But what you can do is do your best to be prepared for this. So I want to thank you for your time. Please click the link below, like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you guys in my next video.